All right. Well, hello and welcome to webinar all about Salesforce flows. So just before we get started, a couple of minor points here. We will record this webinar, and anything that we share today will also be recorded, and also the material will be shared out. So any tips that I share today, we will share them out via email. So all of that is there for you. We appreciate you joining wherever you're calling from. I've seen very, very many familiar faces in the attendees, so thank you for taking time. And we'll officially begin now. So let's get started, because I'm really excited about today. Today's presenters, my name is Amit Mida, and I'm the VP Customer Success at Titan. And joining me today is Yumi Ibrahimzade he's a solutions architect at All's Cloud. Hey Yumi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fantastic. Really pumped to have you today because you have so much to share with us audience today. So let's get started. I'm really, really excited. A little bit about Yumi. He's Salesforce Solutions Architect at All Cloud. He's 20x certified and 8 years of experience. Yumi, I have a question. You have so many certifications. Where do you find the time to get all these certifications?
Well, I always like the exams. It might sound a little strange, but I enjoy taking exams. And plus, I really want to improve myself in every product of Salesforce. So I'm trying to get as many certifications as I can get. And hopefully one day I will also become a certified technical architect.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, right? So tell me about day one. How did you get into Salesforce? What inspired you to get into the industry?
So actually, I met Salesforce by chance. I was studying in university for my master's degree 8 years ago. And in the last semester, I just had 1 day at the university and 4 days I was at home. So I was looking for a job. But you know how it is when I apply for jobs, they always say, oh, okay, you're looking for part-time. But actually, it's 80% time, it's not part-time. But I had hard time finding job, and then I found a company, and I said, okay, I can do whatever you want, just give me a job. And they said, no, not whatever. We have a position actually, and we think that you will be successful at this, and it's also good for career. I said, okay, what's that? They said, we have a CRM called Salesforce, and we want an admin. And you can start as a junior admin, and you can learn and improve yourself. And I really loved, and I wanted to improve myself, and I came to today. So I met Salesforce by chance.
It's an awesome story. And recently you were a Flowfest champion, and I believe some of the best Flow people were in there. So tell me a little bit about Flowfest champion, what happened there, and obviously you were the winner. So really excited to hear the story there.
Yeah, it was a first worldwide Flowfest, Flow competition with hackathon type. And there were more than 1,000 people registered for this, but they said they will select only 100 people because there aren't enough judges. And this was a live event, so we prepared everything and we actually presented all the flows that we prepared. So they selected 100 people to compete in this. And the rules were, they gave us 5 flows to do, and we didn't know which flows before the competition. And they gave us 50 minutes to complete all of these. And they said, the one that completes everything correctly in less time wins. So I completed everything in 23 minutes and I became the champion.
Yeah, one and only Flowfest champion. And other than that, when Yumi does have some spare time, which I can't believe he does, he's got a blog, which is called www.salesforcetime.com. So Yumi, tell our audience a little bit about what your blog is and what sort of information they can find on that blog.
Okay, so I have a blog called salesforcetime.com. It's just about flows right now, and I write posts about some best practices, some use cases, some step-by-step guides, how to perform some actions. And I try to write some tips and some different use cases that you cannot find somewhere else.
Awesome. So new tips. So if you're looking to get tips and information on Flow, then highly recommend you check out salesforcetime.com by Yumi. So super excited for this. Yumi, without further ado, this is your platform and I'll let you take it.
Okay, so before I start with the best practices and the examples, I want to make a short introduction to flows. So it's a very powerful tool that has many features, elements, and use cases. And I can talk about it for many hours and not just 1 hour like today. So today, because of this, I will mostly focus on some best practices and tips, and I will build and show you some examples. But before all of this, I want to make a short introduction to Flow for those who don't know what it is. So Flow is a powerful automation tool, and it can manipulate data in a variety of ways. It gives the admins the power of the developers, and it's the #1 tool when it comes to complex requirements. But Salesforce announced that the other automation tools, which are workflow rules and process builder, will be retired soon. So it's also recommended now to use flows for your simple requirements. And there are many things that you can do with flows. You can delete records. You can create screens to get input from the users or display some data or display image, display text, data, I don't know, links, videos, even whatever you want. And you can also schedule flows to run on a specific time, daily, weekly. You can also work with collection of records instead of just one single record. And also Flow, especially the record triggered flow, can work before save, which was not possible at all with the other automation tools. So there are 5 main flow types. The first one is screen flow. This is the only flow type that supports the screen element, but because it has a screen inside the flow, it requires a user interaction. So it means that the user should click a button and action, or view a page that has this screen flow, or click on utility bar, view it in community, but users should do something in order to launch this flow. It's not triggered automatically. And the next one is record triggered flow. This is the flow type that will replace your workflow rules and process builders. It can be triggered automatically, and I can say that now this is the main flow type. It can run when a record is created or updated or deleted, and there are 2 trigger types for this, 2 ways, let's say. It can work before save or after save. And the next one is schedule triggered flow. This is the flow type that you can schedule to run once, or daily in a specific time, or weekly in a specific day and time. These are the only options, but there are workarounds, of course, to run a scheduled triggered flow once a month on a specific days of month. For example, every first day of the month, run the flow at, I don't know, at 11. There are workarounds to do this, and it works also in the background, and it doesn't require any user interaction. It's scheduled. The next one is platform event triggered flow. It's more or less the same idea with the record triggered, but the triggering thing is not an update or creation or delete on the record, but instead it runs automatically when a platform event is received. It also runs in the background like the others. And auto launch flow. Before Salesforce released all these flow types, there were screen flows and auto launch flows. And when you needed some complex requirements and you had to use flows, this was the flow type that you had to create. But this cannot be run by itself. it cannot run. So you need to call it from somewhere. So just because of this, you had to create a process builder, and from the process builder tree, you had to trigger this. But because today we have all the record triggered flows, no need for process builder. So, and actually you can just build everything inside the record triggered flow, but auto launch flows are still useful. For example, you can build an auto launch flow and you can reuse it in many places. So you can call this auto launch flow as a subflow from a record triggered flow or a screen flow. And it also has a pause element, but just a quick note here that I just recently discovered that when you have a pause element inside an auto launch flow, you cannot call it as a subflow from record triggered flows. This is also important. So this was the last flow type, and let's start with the best practices. So there are many best practices, that's for sure. But today I prepared 7 best practices that I want to go over. So first one is don't perform DML operations or SOCL in a loop. DML means data manipulation language. It's the actions that really manipulates your data in your database. So it can be, if we think about flows, there are 3 types. Can be create, edit, or delete. And SOCL is query actually. So in Flow, it's called get records. So why shouldn't we do this inside the loop? Is that even though Flow is very strong tool, very powerful tool, you still have limits. And there are governor limits. So in a single Flow transaction, the DML statement limit is 150. So it doesn't mean that you can update 150 records. It means that you can have 150 statements. So when you put a create, edit, or delete action inside the loop, and let's say you have 100 records in your loop, or let's say 150, it means that it will go over this action 150 times and you'll hit the limits. Actually, you will hit the limits in 151 because that's the limit. And for SOCL, it's even worse. The limit is 100. So you can have get records element 100 times in your entire flow. Of course, there are some workarounds to reset the limits, like putting a screen, a pause element, or local action. But it is best practice not to use all these pink elements. These are all pink data elements. So no pink element inside the loop. That's the rule. That's the best practice that you should follow. But instead, you should use an assignment element inside the loop, assign the values for variable, add to a collection, and at the end of the loop, you can create the records, edit, or delete them. So let's move to the next best practice. Choose the right trigger type for record trigger flows. So as I mentioned before, there are 2 trigger types for record triggered flow. So it means it can run on before save or after save. There are some differences between them. Also, as you can see in the screenshots, elements inside the toolbox are different. In the before save flow, there are many missing elements because you can just update the triggering record in the before save flows. That's it. You cannot update any other record. You cannot update the parent, child, or you cannot create records, delete records. You cannot send an email. You cannot call a subflow. None of the actions are available. Just the update for the triggering record. So why should I use the before save and not after save? Because it looks like I can do all of these in after save. So try to use before save flows whenever you can, because before save flows, first of all, doesn't consume from the DML limits. it looks like you are updating a record, but it's actually not updating. It's changing the value just before it's saved in the database. So it's not an extra DML. It's not saving the record again. And the second thing is that before save flows are approximately 10 times faster than after save flows. So I think just this one even is a good reason to select before save flows. Let's move to the next one. So define the trigger order of record triggered flows. Okay, so as you know, in workflow rules, you just have if-then statement, and that's it. So if you need few rules, few if-then statements, then you need few workflow rules. But inside the process builder, you can have few if-then statements, if then, if else. You can have all of these. So also in flows, you can have all this logic, plus you can build more complex logic. But because you can have all of these and there's no start criteria for process builders and also triggers, Salesforce always recommends to have just one process builder and trigger for per object. The main reason is that you cannot be sure if you have multiple process builder or trigger on the same object, you cannot be sure which one will run before and what's the order of these processes. But in record triggered flows, there is something different. So when Salesforce announced that there is a new flow type called record triggered flows, everybody got one question on their minds. So should I create one record triggered flow per object, or can I create one before save, one after save, or can I create many? What's the best practice? So this question was unanswered, but actually in the last release, they released a new feature called trigger order. It lets you declaratively set the order of execution of your record triggered flows that are working at the same time. So for example, let's say you have like 5 before save flows on account, and they are all working on before update, and you are now updating a record. And let's assume that none of them have a start criteria, and even if they have, let's say they are all the same, so totally they will work at the same time. But when you set the trigger order inside the version properties of your record triggered flows, all of your flows will run according to the order that you set here. So for example, you can put 1, 2, 3, 4 for all these flows, and they will run according to this order. So it's just a number parameter, actually. You can enter values from 1 to 2000. There is a little complex logic inside these parameters, but try to enter values, like evenly distribute the values, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but instead try to enter 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Because if you create a new flow in the future and you want it to run in the second place, then you don't need to edit all of your record triggered flows. You can just make the trigger order of your new flow as 15, 13, 14, 17, whatever it is. It can go between the first and the second flow that you already had. So the trigger order will be 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. So it will go between. So the next best practice is about actually passing the record into screen flows. So there are many ways to launch a screen flow, but one of them is to create an action on the record. And when you create an action with type flow, you just select the name of your flow, and that's it. There is no mapping of the parameters. So you cannot say, okay, name should go to this parameter, ID should go to this. You cannot do this. But how does it know how to pass the ID, at least? When you create an input text variable called record ID, and it's case sensitive, so So you should create it like this. Then it knows how to pass the ID of the record. Then you can just perform a get records inside your flow to bring the remaining values of your record. But there is a best practice or tip here that if you create your variable not as a text, but as a record variable and select the object, it knows how to pass the entire record so that you won't really need to do another get. And let's move to the next best practice. Okay, use fault connectors to handle errors. So even the perfect flows can fail. Okay, all the flows will fail at some point. Also, my flows are failing, but it's not related to your flow. There can be many reasons for the failure. There can be a duplicate rule, or I don't know, maybe it hits a limit, it's CPU time maybe, or I don't know, SOCL, DML limits, or maybe someone created a new validation rule that you were not aware of. So there can be many reasons. But when it's a sprint flow and when it fails, users get a red message like this, as you can see in the screenshot, and unhandled fault has occurred in this flow. So this is not meaningful, okay? They don't know what happened. And also one point here is that this is unhandled fault. So if you handle your errors, they won't get this. And instead, you can decide what to do. You can update records, create, I don't know, send email to some relevant people, to IT department maybe. And you can also display a screen that displays a better message so that the users will understand what happened. So for example, in this screenshot, you can see that this error occurred when the flow tried to create records, malformed ID. Okay, so they know that the ID that they provided is incorrect, so that they can go back and fix. As you can see, the flow didn't end here because you handled the error. So there are buttons to go back or to the next screen so that they can fix it by themselves because they know what happened. They don't need you in this stage. So it's always best practice to handle your errors. But if you handle the errors in not a screen flow, but in any other type of flow, then you cannot display a screen because screen element is available just in screen flows. So, but you can still handle them, but you cannot change the message that they will see on the screen. But in any case, they see a little more meaningful message than the one that you see here. But one more point here is that when you handle errors in record triggered flows, let's say, the user will not get the error message because it's not an unhandled fault anymore, it's handled. So they won't see that it's really failed. This is also something to consider. And let's move to the next best practice. Okay, so as I mentioned many times, Flow is a very powerful tool, but sometimes the standard elements are not enough. And you need to expand the features of Flow. But unlike the other tools like workflow rules and process builder, here you can introduce your own Apex code or Lightning components for your use only. So, and there are many great resources, for example, unofficial salesforce.com, unofficial SF, where you can install great components, Lightning components for screen flows or actions for your flows. So just because there isn't a standard solution, don't think that you cannot do this with Flow. Probably you can, but you just need to find it somewhere. And you need to understand what you might need. And probably you will find it online as free unmanaged package. But even if not, you can build it for yourself. And the next and last best practice is, it's not a best practice, it's a tip, it's a way of thinking about the flows. So it's the strongest automation tool, okay, but when we say automation tool, we always think that automation should do something with your data. It should edit or create or send emails. This is automation, okay. But you can build screen flows just to display something. Even just a single good morning message is also a flow. Here you can see a screenshot. It's a screen flow that can be placed in the homepage of the users. And it gives like a daily summary, because you can do all kinds of gets in your flow. You can bring any value from any object. For example, here I just did for case and task, but it can be anything. You can build reports even with flows, reports that are not with the objects that are not connected to each other, because it's right now not possible with reports. So you can do all of this with flow and just display the data as a data table maybe that you can install from unofficial Salesforce. So it's just a way of thinking. Okay, so you need to think outside of the box and be creative. So at this point, actually, I want to show you a flow that I did. And I believe it's a different way of flows. Okay, when we say flows, you always think that, okay, it's an automation tool, it will create data, update something, send email, boring things. But I just want to show you something fun that I did with a screen flow. And let's see, and I put it to a public community so everybody can enter and use this flow. Okay, you don't need to be a user in order to see this flow. So here's the community. It's a very simple page. So I built a dice roll game. It's a game, okay? So I'm not telling you to build a game, of course, okay? But I just want to show what can you do with flows. Let's analyze what I did here. Okay, I will enter. So at the beginning, I get a screen like this. Okay, it looks like a login page. And actually, it's not a login page. Okay, it's just a screen flow with two elements on the screen, text and email. And according to what I entered here, it will do a get from the database. I have a custom object for the game rounds. So if it finds a record, it means that I'm already a player in this game, so I can continue where I stop. But if it doesn't find it, will create. So let's click login. Actually, it's a next button. Okay, I just renamed it as login. So it says welcome back. So because it found me, my score is 1000. Okay. So basically, the idea is simple. It will roll a dice. And as you know, a dice can have numbers from 1 to 6. And I need to guess what will it roll. Let's play. So dice is rolling right now. My current score is 1000. There are two modes in this game. I can guess if it's going to be odd or even. So I have like 50% chance. Or I can guess the exact number that will come. So if I select this, as you can see, the fields are changing. There are visibility conditions. It's just a screen flow. Whatever you saw till here, just pure flows. So let's guess right now. Let's say it will be even. I put 200, roll the dice. I won. See, there are confettis. These are all flows. But just the confetti itself is a free component that I installed from unofficial Salesforce, and that's it. Everything else is pure flow. So one more time. This time I will say odd. Okay, so I always win here, but okay. So let's move to the examples. The first example will be on the quote object. So it goes like this. When the code status is updated to needs review, a flow should run. And if there is a code line item that contains 1000 kW in its name, and the total price is greater than 150,000, then submit for approval. If not, then call Titan to create a quote PDF, and Titan will send the quote PDF to the contact, and it will attach it to the files here, and it will change the status to send. But if you need the approval, submit for approval, of course, but after it's approved, again, make the call to Titan in order to create the file, and also save the approval comments into this field. This is the idea. So I actually built this. I will show how it works, but I will rebuild it right now. So this one, as I said, it has 1000 kW, but the total price is not enough. So the approval is not needed. So when I change it to this, it should make a call to Titan. But I have another code. Let's open that one. I have two examples here. This one doesn't need the approval. And let's open the other one. Yes, this one. This one also has 1000 kW and another product, but the price is too much, so it needs an approval. So let's change it to needs review. Let's refresh the page. So here, as you can see, it went to the approval right now. Okay, it's waiting for the approval. So let's approve this. Yes, I approve. So the status becomes approved, okay? But as you can see, the comment that I entered in the approval history, I mean, in the approval process, is updated to here. So I will show you how to build this, but let's go back to the first code. Let's refresh and see what happened. So the status changed to send from Titan itself, and I see that there is a code PDF. Let's open it. So there are some details about the company, about the code. Here there are the products, and I see the total. This is completely configurable. You can play with this and change the fields, change the table design, and you can also decide what to do with this, who to send. Here, I think I got it also. Yes, I got it. So you can decide what to do easily without writing any codes with Titan. So let's see how to do this. First of all, I will go to the flows, new flow, because we said it will run when the status is changed. It's a record triggered flow. And because we are submitting for approval or sending a call to Titan, it should be after save. Otherwise, I will prefer before save. So I select the object is code, and I will select a record is updated. And let's add a condition. So the status equals to needs review, and the status is changed. True. So whenever the status is changed to needs review, this flow will run. And this one means after save, and this one is before save. Okay. Okay, so you have two layout options, auto layout and freeform. I will do it in freeform, but they are both fine. So it sounds like I need to check if there is a quote line item that contains in the name 1000 kW, then I need an approval. Okay, so I will just do a get for the quote line item. Quote line item. Quote line item that is related to the code that triggered this flow. And the product name contains 1000 kW. So it sounds like this, but actually it's not as simple as it sounds because there is no product name. You just have product ID in standard. So I can think of 3 ways to do this. One is to use, but this is the worst option, okay? And I don't recommend you to do this and never do this. You can use the hard-coded product IDs. So you can go here, get the ID of this product. But if you do this, you'll probably build your flows in Sandbox. And when you deploy to production, the ID will be different and you need to change it in your flow. And also, because we are just talking about the text here, there can be more products that contain this word. And you need to put their IDs as well. Okay, let's say there were 5 and you put everything. Next year, they will create another product that contains this. So you need to edit your flow. So because of these reasons, never use hard-coded IDs. Instead, you can do 2 things here. One is you can create a formula field in the code line item and a formula that displays the product name. And then you can just select that field here and say contains 1000 kW. This is the easiest way in this case, but I won't do this. I will do the hardest one, but still it's not hard, okay? So I remove that condition. I'm bringing all the code line items related to this code. Let's select all. Okay, right now I have them all. Let's add a loop and select the collection that it just created. Inside the loop, I will use an assignment to add the product names into a text variable. And at the end, I will have one text variable, a big one, but then I can use, if it contains 1000 kW, then that's fine. So add product names. Let's create a text variable. I won't do a collection because in this case, no need for a collection. So add the product name. So here I can go 1 level up. From the product, I can take the name. But in the get, I cannot do this. Okay. So it will go over each code line item. It will add the product name to this text variable. And at the end of the loop, I need to check the condition. Is approval needed? Yes. Yes means that the product name that I just generated contains 1000 kW. And we had one more criteria. Let's add that one. Total price. Yes, total price greater than equal to 150,000. And I will rename the default outcome as no. So if the approval is needed, I will just submit for approval using the standard action called submit for approval. The record ID is stored in this global variable as we used before. The approval process name in this environment is quote approval. You can use the API name of the approval process or the ID of it. I will skip the entry criteria because I don't know what it is right now. And that's it, if the approval is needed. But we said if the approval is not needed, call Titan. So how can I call Titan? If you have Titan and if you installed Titan in your environment, you get custom actions, and one of them is this. It's very simple to call it because when you have the form itself, you can get all this information easily with clicks. You don't need to write any code at all. So the object ID is again, the ID of the code. And I got these values here. So the hash is this. Hash is specific for your form, so it knows which form to run. Okay, so here, and the key for the connection is here, and that's it. That's the end of this flow. Code flow. So I will show you the next flow also, because as you saw here, we had few things. Let's go from here. We had few things. If approval is needed, we submit for approval, but after it's approved, we need to do some actions. So let's show that one. Save approval comments and send email. This is how I call. I won't build it again because I need time for the next example also. So here, first of all, this is a new feature, okay? So starting from the last release. Field updates that were done from approval process can trigger flows. But before, you didn't have this option. It could trigger workflow rules and process builders, but not flows. But it was still possible, but you had to create an extra process builder just to call your flow. Now it's not needed, and it can trigger your record triggered flows. But two things to consider here. First thing is that your flow should be minimum 54 API version. This is one thing. And the second thing is that the thing that you are probably familiar with, let me show you in your approval process. If there is a field update, then you must mark this. So once it's marked, it will run the other automation tools that are depending on this field update. So in this case, yes, it is. So here is the flow. It's more or less the same idea. When the status is changed to approved, then run this. And again, it's after save, but it's after save just because we are calling Titan, okay? If we didn't have this part, we just update the triggering record, so you could just make it a before save flow. So first step is to get the process instance. Process instance is actually the approval process that is related to your record. So target object ID is the ID of your record. In this case, it's the code. It can be that you submitted for approval for a few times. So in this case, I want to get the last one. So I get only the first record, and I sort by the created date descending. So I will get the last one. Here, there is a decision to check if you found the approval process, because if there's no approval process, no need to continue. So if there is, we continue to get the step. So let me show you from here. So process instance is this, the whole approval process. Process instance step is this step, this specific step. So I will get the step that is related to the process instance, and with the step status approved, because I'm interested in saving the approval comments. Okay, if it's rejected, I don't want to get the comments from there. Again, I'm getting the first record according to the created date descending. So same idea, another decision. If there is no instance step, then no need to continue. But if there is, okay, I will update the code. I will save the approval comments. But as I showed you before in the other code in 5, yes, there can be a value in this field. And in this case, there is. So if I submit for approval again and I write a comment, then it will overwrite the existing data in this field. So because of this, I did a little trick here. I created a formula that I convert the current date time to a text, and I take the last from the left, the 16 characters, which contains only the date, hour, and minutes, and not seconds or milliseconds, whatever. Then I put a dash, then I put the comments that I found from the process instance step. The idea of this get process instance step is just to find the comments. That's why I'm using this. Then there is a line break, and I put the existing approval comments from the record. So it doesn't override, it just adds new value. So let me show you how it works here. Let's say I change it back to needs review. The first flow runs and it submits for approval. Here you can see that I got the buttons now. Nice. It's as you can see, it just added it. Okay, it didn't override the existing one. It just added as new comments. It's a long text area so that it can add many. It's more than even enough. So let's move to the next and last example. It's on the case object. So I will close this. The idea is simple here. It's just to clone the case, but it's not a record triggered flow right now. It will be a screen flow that will open some fields for data entry, so I can enter new subject, description, or origin. And one more thing here is that it will ask me if I want to clone related records. So for example, here we have a case. In the related list, you can see 3 contact roles, 2 case team members, and 1 file. And this is the button that launches a screen flow. Let's click on it. So it's a screen flow with 2 columns. By default, it shows the subject of the existing case, but I can write something new. Case from webinar. Test 1, I don't know, email. So here I will select, okay, let's clone all of them. Next. It gives a toast message. As you can see, it's also coming from Flow. And it asks me something. Would you like to send the case status tracking link to the contact? So if I say yes, it will send an email to all the contact roles that I cloned. This is asking me because I decided to clone contact roles as well. That's why it's asking. If I say yes, it will send an email that contains a link to Titan. And this link, this Titan form, will display the case details to the customer so that they can follow the status of the case. And also they can create case commands, or they can close the case. It's just like when you open a support case for Salesforce, you have the options to enter a command or close the case. So I built something like that, and it gives the customers, which are not users in your system, communicate with your system so they can modify the data in your Salesforce. So let's say yes to this. Email has been sent, and it navigates to the new case. Okay, this is the one that we just created. So even though I didn't select contact or account, these also came because these are mapped in my create records action. And here in the related list, you can see there are 3 contact rows, 2 case team members, and 1 file, like the previous case, because it cloned all these related records. So let's enter a case comment, for example. Let's say we started investigating your problem. Let's save it. Okay, so I am the customer here. Okay, I got an email here. you have a new support case. Thanks for opening a support case. We will solve your issue in a short time. You can check the status, add comments, and close the case from this link. Let's open it. So it is a form that was created from Titan. You can play with its design, you can add more fields, you can add more functionality, but right now the user, the person that sees this page will see the case subject, case number, status, and the case comments. And they have the ability to enter a new case comment. Let's say, thanks. Okay, so I added the case comment as a customer. Okay, again, I'm not a user in your Salesforce. So let's refresh this page. Let's see the related list. Yes, so there is a new case comment coming from the customer. Okay, thanks, looking forward to it. So, okay, and it was new, okay. Let's close the case then. It says that it's closed. Let's refresh here. You can see that it's closed. So this is a great way to give the customers an access to your system so that you can communicate with them. Let me show you how I built this, but just to show you, because we have 3 options here and they are all working with collection of records, my flow has many loops. So because of the time issue, I will build the same thing, but only with 1 option. Okay, so let's go to flows, new flow. It will be a screen flow, obviously, because it's always screen. I'll make it a free form. So first, let's create a new resource called record ID. As you can remember from the best practices that I talked about, I will make it a record of case and I will make it input. Okay, so that it will pass the whole record. And let's add a screen here. I will call it case details. Okay, so let's make it 2 columns. Okay, if you don't know this new feature, you can create up to 4 columns, and that's it. But in our case, 2 will be enough. Let's add a text field here for the subject. I will make it required. It can stay blank, no problem, but I will put a default value from the existing case. Next will be the description. Again, I will put a default value, but it's optional totally. Okay, so let's add the origin as a pick list. I will make it required also. So for the choices, there are a few ways actually. One is you can just create the choices directly from here, one by one. The other one is to create a pick list choice set, which will dynamically bring all the choices from the pick list field. So let's call it origin choices. Object is case, data type pick list, field origin. And also I can put the default value. So let's put what we have inside the existing case. So here, that's it. But in the next column, let's display a text. Okay, it will be the question. So let's call it what to clone. Which related records like to clone? I will make it, I don't know, bold. It's completely a rich text, so you can play with it. Okay, so I don't know. So the options, I will make it a checkbox, but in this example, there will be only option, okay? And it will be the contact role. And that's it. So after the first screen, let's create the case, okay? Create case, we will create just one from separate resources. Object is case. Let's map the field. So account ID should be the same account ID from existing case. Contact ID, again, same contact ID from the existing case. I will also populate the record type ID. Then the subject will be the subject that I entered on the screen. Then comes description, same thing here. And the origin is the origin value that I selected on the screen. So here you see two, because these are all the choices that we created. And this is the one that stores my selection. So at the end of this, we clone the case. Now it's time to ask if we should clone the contact roles. Need to clone contact roles. Let's say yes. Yes means that the checkbox that I created equals true. And default outcome, I will call it as no. So if I said yes, then first we need to get the contact roles, because at this point we don't know who are the contact roles. And the contact role can be on few objects. So this one is called case contact role. I will get it according to the case ID equals to the record ID. And I will get all of them, okay? So at this point, I will put another decision to check if there are contact roles. Are there records? Because if there are no contact roles, there's no point to continue. Yes means that, I will make it one. Yes means that the get contact roles is not null, is null false. Let's make it no again. Okay. If there are records, okay, let's loop through these records. As I told you before, inside the loop, I won't create the contact roles. Instead, I will just assign them to a variable, assign values, let's say. I will create a new variable for this object, contact role variable is a record, case contact role, that's it. So I just need to map the field. So the case ID will be the case ID that we just created. It stores it automatically. Then the contact ID is from the loop. Then the last thing is the role or title. Yeah, role. That's it. So at this point, I have a variable. It's ready, but it's not created yet. Okay, so I will add this variable inside the collection. So add to collection. I need to create this collection first. So I will create a variable contact role collection record. Again, it's the same thing, but the only difference is that I need to mark this checkbox. So it's a collection that can store many records, and I just need to add the variable that I assigned. Okay, so we will add this here, then it will go back to the loop, and at the end of the loop, it will create the records. at once so that it will consume just one DML limit. Create contact roles, multiple, and this. Okay. So actually, this is the end of the flow. But if you leave it like this, at the end of the flow, they will just see your flow is finished. It's not a good message. So instead, you need to display something, a good message, success message, or you need to do something. So in this case, I will do something instead of displaying. I will navigate to the new case. So there is no navigate in a standard flow, but there is a custom component that can be installed from unofficial Salesforce again. And it can navigate everywhere. Also, the name is like that. So the destination type, I will say it's a record. Action is view. And the record ID is this new case. So at the end, it will go here. But don't forget to map your other decisions here. For example, here, if there were no contact roles, so you should go to this navigate again. Also same here. If I said no need to clone the contact roles, again, navigate here. And at the end, that's how it is in free form. It doesn't look good here, but we can switch to auto layout. I will lose the positions, but it looks better at least. So it looks like this. Let's save it. Clone case with contact role, save, and activate. So I will go to the case object. I will replace the existing button with this flow, this new flow. Clone with related, edit. Clone case with contact role, save. As you can see, there is no mapping, okay? It doesn't say that pass the record to this, but when you create it as record ID, it knows how to pass. So let's save, and I will refresh this screen. Okay, the button is the same button. Okay, so here are the default values, but I will change them. Okay, case from webinar to test to, and origin is, let's make it web. And okay, I want to clone the contact roles. And just a second, because it's a new flow, it's always doing this. The buttons were hidden. Now there is a next button. Case from webinar 2, again, test 2, web. Yes, I want to clone the contact role. So what happened is it navigates to the new case from webinar 2. This is the new one. And you can see all the account, contact, everything came. The case origin is here. The description and subject are the new values that I entered. And inside the related list, you can see 3 contact roles that it just cloned. And this is the end of this example. And it's actually the end of everything that I prepared for today.
Hey, Yumi, thank you so much. I really appreciate that what you've done today, really exposed the power of flow and given us a great masterclass. Now, before we round off the session, now's your chance to ask any questions, so fire away. Excuse the hammering in the back, but yeah, if you have any questions, please let us know right now. We'll be happy to respond. I think there was a question asked earlier, Yumi, which was, let me just get hold of it. 1 second. It was a really good question, which was, would you use after-save if calling from any other Salesforce third-party apps?
Yes. I mean, if you mean that you want to call another app from the flow, it must be an after save.
Yeah. Okay.
Because inside the before save flow, you don't have the action option at all. You can just update the triggering record and that's it. If you want to call something somewhere else or even to send an email, you need an after save flow.
Awesome. Yeah, where will the link will be shared? It will be on our YouTube channel, Form Titan 101. We will also share it on our LinkedIn page, Form Titan. You can find it there. Any other questions, please? We have a couple of minutes. You've got the flow master here who knows a lot about flows, so ask. Okay, I have a question. Can we display milestones remaining time in ScreenFlow, for example, to display all milestones with remaining time?
I mean, milestones are stored in an object in Salesforce, I believe. So because you can access almost any object or table from the database, I think you can bring the values and display them in a ScreenFlow. But in the milestones, it's like a live, right? It's like counting down. So when you do a get, probably you'll just get one value. So I'm not sure if you can display a countdown in a flow screen.
I have a question here. Do you have recommendations for dealing with data sets of 50,000 plus?
50,000 plus. So it's about the limits actually, right? So when you get a record, I mean, when you do get records, and if there are more than 50,000 in the result, then it fails, because also in the Apex class, it fails. So in order to do this, I think you need to put some conditions and maybe perform few gets and not one. If you can divide the whole data into few parts, I believe that will be a solution for that.
Nice. What is the difference between orchestrator and using the order in flow?
Actually, orchestrator is a very new topic that I also need to learn. Actually, there was a nice webinar about orchestrator yesterday, but it's not going to replace flow, that's for sure. It's a separate type, let's say, and you can also access the orchestrator from the templates of flow, but I believe it's something completely different from the trigger order. But I think time will tell, because right now I'm not good with the orchestrator, since it's a very, very new feature and it's not basic flow.
Yumi, you mentioned this source. Where is the source? Where can they go to find more information about the orchestrator?
I mean, for the orchestrator, there was a webinar yesterday that Salesforce Ben did.
Yeah.
But in general, I saw that there are some articles on unofficial Salesforce about the orchestrator. I believe there should be something official from the Salesforce articles or maybe from Trailhead, but it's a topic to be learned.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Please fire away. I just got a very simple one here. Don't you think Flow is overshoot for all the automation, and that Salesforce still needs to keep workflow for simple, straightforward, and quick automations? I mean,
after all this hands-on and working with flows like every day, for me, it's the simplest option, but I understand you that it's something complex and it's not straightforward like workflow rules. Yeah, that's for sure. But
yeah,
for me, it's fine. Yeah, I'm good with the flows and I like flows. It can stay like this, but I get your point. It's after some point, it's really complex and it becomes like to perform. For example, I saw an example, a crazy flow, a very big flow that doesn't even fit your screen, that is just sending one happy birthday email at the end, okay? So this makes me think like, it's just an email, okay? why do I need all this complex flow? So this is your point, actually. I think so. There should be more simpler way to build all this automation, which is not flow, but right now, flow is the top topic, and I think it will be the future of automations after the retirement of all this workflow and process builder. And I don't think that there will be more simpler way.
Yeah, there's a question here. Is there any risk to create complex flow per object, or better subflows or little flows?
Actually, when you create one big flow, it will be hard to understand and follow all the steps. So I recommend to use subflows, but at the end, the idea will be the same. Okay, so it's a huge flow again, that calling the subflow, you don't see it in one screen, but actually it's doing all the same actions. So basically, for me, to understand everything better and follow the steps, using a subflow is best practice, if you ask me. But at the end, it's doing the same thing. I think it's still doing all the gets and data actions.
Nice. Got a question here which is more Titan related, so I'll answer that one. Can the docgen action in Flow create different documents in bulk and join them in one document? Well, in Titan, we've actually already kind of done that for you. You don't have to create a flow where there is an option already automatically available, which will allow you to merge the documents, no matter how many documents, into one PDF. So you don't actually have to create a flow at all. It's already there for you. You just have to check multiple documents and then go ahead and merge them. It's very, very simple. Is there any chance flows will have more ability to add comments per step to show less developer what is happening?
In the flow, I think there will be a new feature for that, but don't count on me for that. This is I think that's what I saw somewhere or heard. But right now you just have the description inside each element in the flow. At least you can write comments there, but it's not visible when you look from outside. You just need to go inside it and then see it. But I really hope that they will add this feature.
And then finally, I think there was, before save, many small ones or single large one, the same for after save. I assume that's following on from the what you explained earlier.
Yes, actually. Yeah, you can have a complex one also, but in the before save flow, first of all, there's no way to call a subflow. So whatever you will build will be in the same flow. But before they introduced the trigger order option, I thought that you had to create just one before save and one after save. So I created many big before save flows, but looks like it's not needed, and you can just keep smaller flows and use a start criteria, because unlike the workflow rules or process builder, when you have the start criteria, the record will not trigger your flow if it doesn't meet the criteria. That's the difference between the start criteria and a decision inside the flow. So what I'm saying is you can build few flows, but specific start criteria.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a Titan question here. Is Flow used to create Titan form URL using an example for the case comments? No, it's not. And Candice, thank you for answering that. The URL is created in Titan forms. By the way, if you're interested about the Titan products, then we really want to keep this for Flow specific, a little bit of Titan. But if you are interested and you really want to know, then I can give you a URL shortly where you can ask these questions. So any other flow related questions here? For the Titan related questions, I've posted a link into the Q&A, into the chat, which you can use to schedule time with us, and we'll be able to answer your questions in depth. Finally, any last few questions? The retirement date most likely will come from Salesforce. So I don't think even Yumi would have that. Do you, Yumi?
I don't have an exact date, But actually, I wrote a post about this on my website. I found the approximate dates before, so I can check that. But the workflow rules will for sure retire before the process builder. I think in the next or maybe the other release. But process builder, I think it has one more year for that.
Okay, 1 or 2 more minutes more. So we can take one more question. So if somebody can fire away with one more question, and then I think we're done. Okay, this is a really good one. Does Yumi teach separate class or help people on the side with Flow?
I mean, I don't have a class, but actually I get this question from many people, and they want me to, I don't know, prepare something, a class, or maybe at least videos. I don't know, but I am thinking about that. But at the moment, I don't have.
Okay, well, in that case, is there some place where they can reach out to you, Yumi? Is it on LinkedIn? Do you have an email? Anything that we can pass on to the audience?
Yes, you can reach me from the LinkedIn. I have an email. I can post it here also. It's not a problem.
Please.
But I think I answer all the questions from the LinkedIn. So, but I will post it here as well. I'm writing right now.
Cool. There's the email. You can also reach out to Yumi on LinkedIn. Let me just post your LinkedIn profile as well, so just everybody has got access to it. Bear with me. Okay, here is Yumi's LinkedIn profile. So two ways you can reach out to Yumi. And finally, a cool story that I shared with Yumi was that I asked Yumi how he got good at flows, and he mentioned that he used it on day-to-day basis with many tasks, such as tracking how much milk his twins are consuming on a daily basis. So, Yumi, would that be your final point here, that in order to just get good at this, just use your daily life and daily tasks to create flows?
Yes, exactly. Because I mentioned before, I work at a Salesforce partner, so I use flows for my projects every day. And besides that, I really love flows, as you can see and understand from this. And it's like a hobby for me. So after the work hours, I continue building flows just to improve myself, and I use flows to track my personal stuff also. As you said, I use the flows even to track how much milk my twins drank every day. So it means almost every second I'm with flows. So if you love what you are doing, you will always succeed, that's for sure. And hands-on is very important in this point.
Awesome, really good tip. Well, Yumi, look, I can't thank you enough for taking time out and showing us all this value. So I really appreciate it. And thank you I'm sure the audience really appreciates it as well. So, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. We really appreciate you taking time out. And hopefully we'll do another one soon. Thank you for coming along, and have a nice night, wherever you're calling from. Thank you.
Thank you for joining and listening.